Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Marty, Superintendent here in Parkway, and it's my pleasure to welcome you tonight to the Candidate Forum. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Before we begin tonight, this was another tough day for educators in this country, for those that are associated with schools. I can't tell you, every time this happens, it seems to eat away at our hearts, and it was a very tough day. And I would just ask that we just pause for a moment to think about the families and the children and the educators in Nashville and, of course, all around the country. If we could just pause for a moment. Thank you. And it was a tough day for us here in Parkway because many of you may not know, but our families do, that we also had many threats this afternoon. And I just want to thank two gentlemen in the back there who are on the front line, Paul Tandy, our Director of, or Chief Communications and Emergency Management Officer, and Mike Christian, who supervises our security personnel. We had some threats, and I should say fortunately nothing, but again, just a very difficult day. So thank you for all your support, community, and supporting our educators and supporting our young people. Well, we are grateful again to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum. In my dozen years now as superintendent in Parkway, this is an annual event, and I really appreciate their willingness every year. So if you're a volunteer for the League, would you just raise your hand, please, and look around the room? We have a number of them here in the room. And thank you, citizens, for coming tonight. I also, and the board candidates know this because I met with them, and of course we have incumbents, but I met with them. I'm always amazed at people who are willing to serve on boards of education. I think you know the pay is wonderful, but to serve their community or desiring to serve the community, I think is a great tribute. So I thank them for their willingness to put their name before the voters in the community. I think that's a wonderful gesture on their part, and I wish them well tonight. So it's my pleasure now to turn the evening over to the League of Women Voters. It's my pleasure to introduce the woman who will be moderating tonight, Kathleen Farrell, who's already said she's done a number of these this spring. So Kathleen, welcome, and again, thank you to the League.
Thank you. Okay, can everybody hear me in the back? If you can't, just wave your hands and I'll try to pay attention to that. Good evening, and on behalf of the St. Louis League of Women Voters and the Parkway School District, particularly Kathy Dodge, this forum is happening so that we can make some good decisions about who to vote for on April 4th. It's being streamed on Parkway's YouTube site. If you want to text your friends and tell them, they can get to that YouTube site from the Parkway District website, and it will remain there for them to see it afterwards. My name is Kathleen Farrell, and I'm going to be your moderator tonight, and I'd like you to do a couple things. First of all, I'd like you to turn off your cell phones. If you want them to vibrate in your pocket, that's great, but I really want you to turn them off. Sometimes we think we have them off, but we don't, and they startle us. The second thing is, I'd like to ask that we sort of wait until all the candidates are done for applause. No matter how much you like what they're saying, or maybe you won't like what they're saying, I'd like you to do that because my goal is to get through as many questions as I can tonight. So there we have it. I want to thank the candidates for participating, and sometimes we have candidate forums where candidates decide they're not going to show up. So I appreciate very much your being willing to do that. And all of you have the opportunity to elect 3 of these individuals for 3-year terms. And we have seated them as they are in order on the ballot. So, Mr. Jeff Todd, Mr. Ryan Kerr, Ms. Kathy Guerra, Ms. Debbie Hopper, Mr. Mark Ivancic. Close enough? Okay. I'll get it right about the second turn. And Ms. Tiffany Matt Franklin and Mr. Matt Alon. Okay? So what's going to happen is they're going to give their opening statements in that order, the order of the ballot. And then closing statements we're going to do in the reverse order. So we'll start with the bottom of the ballot. And the League believes that one of the best ways for voters to learn about people who want to be elected officials is to hear them in person and to hear them answer your questions, not my questions, not some media representative's questions, although there's nothing wrong with that, but your questions. And therefore, the questions tonight come exclusively from all of you. Now, many say, and this is another day where we're saying this again, and I read around a little bit and sort of looked at the chatter on various social media sites about this race and other races, and sometimes people say, look, school boards have gotten so politicized that we can't sit down and talk to one another if we don't agree. But I know that you are here tonight because you don't buy into that. And you believe that we should sit down together and figure out how to give the best education we can to our students. So, we've got some rules that we hope will help make that happen. And here they are. As I said, candidates are going to have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and then each candidate is going to have 1 minute to answer each question. Even if the question is directed to one person, and there are several like that. What I've tried to do is to put those questions together so that everybody has an opportunity to address that subject. And then everybody is going to have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Now here's your job, and I've already told you what part of it is. Write questions of interest to issues in your district on the cards that have been given to you and collected. And if you write a question and you're done, and please only put one question on each card, okay? I'm 72 years old, pretty spry, but that's helpful to me if I don't have to read 5 questions. So just raise your hand and one of our volunteers will come and get that from you. Now, you might think of something as you hear people talk. And so if you need another card, just raise your hand and our volunteers will be happy to get that to you. Fair enough? So here's the timekeeper, and she is Ms. Sue Williams. And I'm a retired professor and college administrator, and she's a retired school teacher, and she takes no nonsense. So she's got a 30-second sign, and she's got a stop sign, and between the two of us, we're pretty good at cutting people off. So it's not that we don't like you or find what you're saying to be interesting. It's just that we want to be fair. Now, I, as the moderator, have reserved the right to combine questions, and I will tell you that this morning, everybody must have submitted them, because at 10 o'clock, all of a sudden, there were 62 questions that appeared on the League website, and there were a few before it, spring break, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of these questions are similar, so I want to do that. I also, if the question is about somebody's private life, exclusively, I will not ask it. But if it deals with a habit which affects their performance, I will deal with it, okay? Just so that you know what I'm doing. Now, anybody can videotape this or audio tape it as you want. It's an open forum. And they're going to leave it up on their website, and the League is going to put it up on their website as well. So, with that in mind, anybody have any questions? All right, then we're going to begin with opening statements, those 2-minute opening statements, and we're going to begin with you, Mr. Todd.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here tonight to hear what all these candidates have to say. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. We really appreciate this forum and opportunity to address the questions of our community. So thank you. Again, my name is Jeff Todd. I was elected to the board in 2017, 6 years ago. And it was after probably serving 12 or so years in the district as a volunteer in the schools where my kids were. I served everywhere from helping run the reading program for elementary school students all the way up to being PTO president in multiple buildings and literally everything in between. I then kind of moved into the district role, serving on several district committees to learn a little bit more about the district, and it just seemed like a natural progression for me to run for a seat on the board. I did that in 2017, as I mentioned. It was successful. In 2018, I was elected by my peers as president of the Board of Education and have been every year since. So for the last 5 years, I've kind of tried to steer us all together in the direction that the district has gone, and try to do the work of the people. As you know, this role is a representative of you. It's our job to do your work and be the oversight on your behalf. And we have 17,000 students and 3,000 employees that we also report to. But it's really those 17,000 students, those are the reason that we do what we do. So I would appreciate your vote on April the 4th, and thank you very much.
Right on the button. Mr. Kerr.
My name is Ryan Kerr, and thank you so much for League of Women Voters, as well as a couple other forums that we've had. It's nice to engage with voters in general when it's not Saturday and Sunday and walking around neighborhoods. So my name, again, is Ryan Kerr. I am a 39-year-old nurse. My wife, also a registered nurse here in St. Louis. We bought our house 12 years ago in Parkway, solely because my wife went to Parkway, graduated from Parkway South. My mother-in-law taught for 40 years in Parkway, in special school district, and it was important to us to have our kids have the best education they could possibly have, especially with in the public realm. And that was the whole foundation of us setting that course of life. Now, when it comes to the actual board, it wasn't something I wanted to be involved with until my kids started school. Once my kids started school, they started to see areas that could be fixed, areas that should be fixed, and then the violence was very unsettling to me within the last year and a half within the district. And that's something that I think has to be taken head on in order to have a district where we want to send our kids to school in the name of their safety in general. So thank you again, and I would appreciate your vote on April 4th.
Thank you. Ms. Guerra.
Okay, thank you for having us and our opinions. I have fond memories of my mother being in the League of Women Voters many, many years ago. I am a counselor, and I work with adolescents currently. I've been a teacher and a high school guidance counselor. I've been a mom of 7, and I love kids. I've been a long time, 40-year Parkway resident, and we moved here for Parkway. And I remember trusting Parkway with a few of my children and my grandson. I remember trusting, and I think that is what is paramount between a board and its parents, its constituency. I am not sure about the trust level right now, so that's why I'm running. I am running on trust. I want to protect children's brains from some of the things out there. A lot of kids that I see are hurting and fearful, and I would like to see some of that change. So I would appreciate your vote on April 4th. And again, my name's Kathy Guerra. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters in the Parkway District for tonight's candidate forum. It has been my honor to be serving on the Parkway School Board for almost 9 years. I attribute this longevity to the community placing their trust in me, knowing I will fight for them, listen to them, and respond to the best of my ability. The last 5 years on the board, I have held the position as vice president, a mark of the trust my fellow board members have also placed in me. Since 2015, I've also been serving on the Special School District's Governing Council and elected chairwoman for 2 years. While I have mostly enjoyed being on the school board, I honestly have not enjoyed every moment, which is the reason why I'm running for a 4th term. You heard that correctly. I've not enjoyed it, and I'm still running. And why? I've been asked that many times. And the simple reason is because I care deeply about this Parkway community, and there's a lot of hard work ahead of us, and difficult decisions need to be made, some of which are gut-wrenching, some of which a board member must do their homework and make that tough decision in an objective manner and in respectful conference with their fellow board members, all while losing a lot of sleep and having a little angst. But tough decisions have to be made for the right reasons, and as an elected official, we have to be up for that task. I am up for that task. I've expended a tremendous amount of energy and time on training, learning about district operations and finances, staying current on legislative and educational matters, cultivating relationships around the community and with our district administrators and students and parents. I've given all of this in addition to being an active parent in the district. I am well prepared to continue in this important leadership position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ivancic.
Hi, good evening, I'm Mark. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting the forum on. I want to thank the Parkway School District for the building, and Linda Susie. I want to thank all of you for showing up. It shows me that you're interested in the school district, you're interested in what happens with the future of your children. I want to thank everyone sitting here because it's a sacrifice to run and to take on a 3-year term on the board, which is a lot of work. I have lived in the Parkway School District for 24 years. My children went to private school. I have not been involved in the school district. However, I have been a board member on multiple boards, and my phone is ringing because I thought I turned it off. Sorry about that. I was never taught proper etiquette, I think. I have not had children in the school district and have not been involved in the school district, but I have been on other boards, and I understand what it takes to work on a board, to work with other board members, to put things together, to have plans, and to work through them. But the one advantage I do have is that I am not tied into the network of Parkway. I do have the ability to look at things and say, why not? Or why? Or just because we've done it that way before, doesn't mean that's the way we need to do it now. So I do thank you again for coming this evening and hearing what we have to say. And as they said in Raiders of the Lost Ark, choose wisely.
Thank you. Ms. Mapp Franklin.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this forum on tonight. I appreciate everyone that has gathered here and that's viewing online. Good evening. I'm Tiffany Mapp Franklin, and I was appointed to the Parkway School Board in June of last year. In the last 10 months, I've had the opportunity to meet teachers, principals, administrators across the district. And I am in awe in all of the ways that they put the time and care into their various roles. It makes me proud to know that my 3 children who are currently in elementary, middle, and high school have had the opportunity to attend a school district that cares about and nurtures them as well as challenge them academically. Prior to my appointment, I served Parkway in a number of roles. I was on the Project Parkway Steering Committee, and I was also a member of the Parkway ECHO-D Task Force. I've also been involved in my children's elementary school since they began. I've worked as a library aide, I volunteered in the classrooms, I was a junior achievement volunteer, and I was on the trivia night committee for 2 years before joining the PTO as vice president and then president. I also was a substitute teacher in the district for 2 years, 2018 to 2020. As a former 6th through 8th grade math and science teacher, I understand the pressures and stresses of teachers all over the country, and many more that have been added since the global pandemic. I'm currently a project manager in the aerospace industry, and I've spent 15 years in that role. I think many of the things that I've learned through my 15-year career translates well to the board. As far as community service is concerned, I was also a commissioner on the Judicial Commission, which is a nonpartisan role appointed by the Missouri governor. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Mr. Aylen.
My name is Matt Aylen. I'm a Parkway resident for about 14 years. I'm married and have 7 children. 2 have graduated from South High School. I have 1 in South High School presently. I have 2 here in South Middle, and I have 2 in Hannah Woods. So I run the full gambit as far as the schools in the Parkway system. By education, I'm an engineer, a civil engineer. I have my license in the state of Missouri to practice engineering. So I'm very logical. I think I've taken a lot of math and a lot of science. And sometimes it doesn't come in so handy with my wife. But I do, and as I know, I don't have the experience as the present incumbents do as far as being on the school board. But I have worked with numerous contractors and numerous other engineering firms. And I know what it takes to get along and sometimes even compromise and just so things can get done. So, I thank everybody for coming out tonight, and yes, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to begin with Mr. Kerr for the very first question. And I'm going to try to give you a sense of how many people were interested in a particular issue when I do this, so that you know sort of what people care about the most, or at least, you know, what was asked the most. So the first question is, what is the greatest challenge that you think that the district faces? And some people said, what should be the district's highest priority? Some people asked, do you think that the district is going in the right direction? So, Mr. Kerr.
So there's multiple points there. I think financially the district's in a very good place, and the board has done a very good job of that over the last decade or so, previously. As far as biggest improvement, it's the violence. We have an unprecedented amount of violence in this district this year compared to any year in the past decade. And school year is not over yet. Unfortunately, that causes a lot more mental health issues, a lot more bullying that's not being dealt with, and then the self-defense. A child should be able to, in a witnessed event, defend themselves. If they can't defend themselves without being suspended, what are we teaching our children? That they should be beat until somebody comes to their, to save them? And it's not, that's something that I think causes a lot more mental health than it does anything to protect any kids.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Guerra.
I would say first and foremost, the curriculum, which is definitely excelling in social emotional learning, with which I disagree. And I think what it is doing, as opposed to uniting students, people, parents, it is rather divisive. That's first and foremost that needs to be worked on. And then safety in the school, as Mr. Ryan had mentioned, that needs to be worked on too, and extreme discipline.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Hopper?
Would you mind just repeating the question one more time, please?
Yes. What is the highest priority to fix problems? What's the greatest challenge of the district? Do you think we're going in the right direction?
Okay, thank you. I think one of our main things that we need to work on is our achievement gap. As we have been talking about and seeing as part of our State of the District address, some of the data that came out was disturbing. That said, we see that we are still in the top 10 and 20% within the whole state of Missouri with some of our scores, but there's still work that needs to be done and could be done better. We need to get past this whole changing the tests and assessments and things of that nature. I do think that we're moving in the right direction. We have Project Parkway that I encourage everybody to be involved with. April 27th, I believe, is our next meeting. And that's where everybody can be involved and have a voice in that. I do also see our discipline process and disparities are something that we need to continue to work on. We have low staff morale issues. We have student attendance issues that need to be addressed. And thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ivancic?
Parkway has always been a leader in academics. And I think even when, 20-some years ago when we moved into Parkway School District, people always said, well, Parkway's a place you want to go. They've got the school district. And academically, they are ranked high in the state, and we all know that. But I do think that we need to change the academics a little in the sense that we have a little too much social and cultural and worrying about things that are not necessarily academic. We need to put the emphasis back on mathematics, science, the basics of school. We used to call it the 3 R's, but I realize I'm old and that's different. But I do think we need to take the academics and put it back into education and in that aspect.
Thank you. Ms. Matt Franklin?
I think that our highest priorities would be addressing the academic gaps that we have in our schools, specifically within our subgroups. I would also say that the other thing that we should be looking at, and it's going to be a challenge, is our nationwide teacher shortage that we are going to be facing in the next few years. We are graduating less teachers in this country than we are putting students into the classrooms. We are going to have to be innovative in our thinking and how we educate our children. That's it for me for right now.
Mr. Ayler?
In my opinion, I think it's the education aspect of it. I'm a firm believer in stay in your lane, and like Mark said, go back to any basketball coach will tell you, what do? You go back to the basics. That's what we need to do. And I think the number one thing that the school is challenged with is the whole social, emotional. I don't think physically or even logistically it's possible. It's just way too much on teachers' plates. They've already got enough as it is.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Todd?
A lot of great answers. Many of them I had jotted down, but obviously our greatest challenge is educating kids and building an educational atmosphere that's conducive to their learning, and at the same time to give teachers the tools they need to be successful in delivering that curriculum. I think our highest priorities among them need to be the addressing of mental health issues. It's something that we've been working on seriously for the last several years. The staffing shortage that is facing a lot of districts across the country. Fortunately, Parkway hasn't had that issue yet with regard to teachers. We have had staffing shortages in lots of other areas, which presents a whole different set of circumstances that we have to face. Again, I think the finances, I think we're in great shape, but I think closing those achievement gaps and the disparity in discipline are among the other significant ones.
Thank you. Ms. Guerra, we're going to start with you this time. And talking about those concerns, here were two here's one question that was asked over and over again, and that is about class size. They say teachers are worried about it, some parents are worried about it, and I can't claim that this is a factual number, but this is the number that popped up 3 times. In some elementary classrooms, the questioners are claiming that there's as many as 27 kids in one classroom. And they talked about not being able to deal with individual students and their concerns or groups of students and their concerns and really do what they need to do. They also said in these questions that Parkway says that they're working on it, but at least 4 people said they haven't seen anything happen yet. So they want to know what are you going to do? So.
Okay. Well, first of all, teacher aides are integral to a classroom. That is a huge number, correctly speaking, 27 per class for one teacher. And I remember being a teacher myself, having so many different mental issues to work with and levels of learning and ability. It is a difficult task in the classroom, that we know. And I think if we really hold our teachers to a standard, give them decent pay, more than they're making, and improve the discipline policy, then I think that we will retain our teachers better and have better teacher aides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ms. Hopper, what about you?
We take pride in our district that we do have one of the lower class sizes than most districts do. We have been challenged with that, mainly because of a shortage in teachers, and we are struggling with that. And we're hoping that we can continue to improve upon the number of teachers that we can hire. Some of our elective classes are the ones that we see are having more numbers of students. And so I do understand where that is an issue. But we still are, we do look at our class sizes. Administration makes adjustments to those periodically at the very beginning of the year when we see what our enrollment is going to be. We've got maximums, we have targets, and according to our board policy, we are to stay below that maximum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Avanson.
In talking to some of the teachers that I have talked to throughout the district, that seems to be the number one thing that comes up is classroom size. And it is something that probably needs to be addressed. I do know that the board is addressing it. However, the teachers tell me they don't think it's going fast enough. So the question then is exactly what Jeff was saying, is we need to recruit more teachers. There needs to be a more solid plan put together to recruit teachers. But then I even wonder, is there opportunity to bring in others? Maybe we need to bring in some more volunteers from the community to help with the classrooms and teach and the parents and those types of things, or set up programs that allow stimulation at colleges to train more teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Mapp Franklin.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, it's about class size. And some people are saying that in some elementary classrooms, that can be 27. And they're also saying that the district said it was going to do something about it, but they haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So as Ms. Hopper said, Parkway has a policy that keeps our maximum class sizes actually below the Missouri standards. And so that's something that I know all of our principals work hard to achieve. Sometimes it's not possible based on how the numbers come in, and it might be that it's too late to hire a new teacher because the numbers came in late. But it is something that we are continuing to work on. As Ms. Hopper said, a lot of times we do see the higher class sizes in electives, and that also is due to varying situations that principals are aware of and are making those adjustments so that they are more consistent across the board.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Aylen.
Unfortunately, the times we live in now, the workforce is for some reason dwindling. I don't know why. And it's hard to find teachers, even just to find people to work, let alone teachers. I mean, my opinion is that, I mean, it may not be the favorite thing to do, but parents may have to step up their game a little bit in order to actually help their children. And like I said, it's not the easiest thing to do, especially, I mean, I've got right now 5 kids in school, and trying to help them with homework alone is sometimes hair pulling. So,
Thank you. Mr. Todd?
The state does have very specific numbers, and they vary by class or by age range. Board policy is far lower than the state averages or the state numbers, and we expect our HR staff to staff those classrooms appropriately. And they do an outstanding job of working with what they have to work with. I know we've hired teachers the day before school has started, even a couple of days after. And so that's a challenge. We also have a fairly transient population in some different parts of the district. And so it's a challenge when we have as many as 20, 30 students who may be new students during the course of a semester to a particular school, and trying to juggle those. Obviously, the most impacted are special programs, special classes, electives, but also our nurses and our counselors. They're the ones that have the extra workload when there's more students that come in.
Okay. Finally, Mr. Kerr.
Yeah, I think with this one, it's less emphasis on the teachers. We're always going to be hiring teachers, but I think we have to have more emphasis on teaching aides, that we can give heavy training with neurodivergency. I think neurodivergency in our schools now is a whole other issue that we've never really grasped or dealt with in the past decade or two. And that's now an overwhelming problem with distractions in classrooms. My first grader has 40 children in their classroom and 2 teachers as part of a pilot program. There's aspects to that are good. There's a lot of distraction, and she's been home twice as many days this year as our kindergartner, and the amount of days last year when she was in kindergarten. So I think as far as doing that in a respiratory pandemic, we also run risks that I'm not sure we would have taken a year ago, and yet that was a good idea this past year, which has left us with picking up that slack.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to start this time with Ms. Hopper. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And a related question, and I would say 10 people. I got almost 100 questions online. And then, you are echoing what many of those people said. They're worried about staff shortages across the board, and people started to mention that. But they want you to be specific. What strategies, what policies will you put in place, not just to have more teachers and teachers' aides, but all the other support staff, like bus drivers and nurses and counselors and all across the board? What specifically would you do?
Okay. Well, a couple of the things that we have just gone through in the matter of the last month or two and reviewing the data over a period of several months with our chief HR, human resources person and our CFO, is looked at our budget and how can we keep salaries competitive as well as the benefits competitive for all of our staff. We've done this across the board, every bracket, every channel, which way it goes. We have looked at all of that and have made improvements with that. The other thing that we are continuing to do, we have a Grow Your Own program in Spark for teachers, and we also have, that's what we consider our Grow Your Own, so that we're trying to bring in an influx of teachers. And I think, first and foremost, I think we need to have an environment, a working environment that people enjoy working in, and that includes teachers, support staff, that they feel that they're respected
Thank you.
and safe.
Mr. Ivancic.
Yeah, I would agree with what I'm hearing here from everyone at this table, is that we have to come up with a program to, bring more teachers in, but also more, I think the words ancillary personnel. You have teachers' aides, Why not have the parents step in and do more? Is there opportunity for seniors to volunteer and work in the education process? Is there opportunity to take college students that are in the process of, freshmen in college, they're undecided. Maybe we should have a program that we could bring them in, get them interested in education, and allow them to be involved, and then they in turn may want to turn and become an educator on their own.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Matt Franklin.
So when it comes to our support staff, I think one of the biggest things that we can and have been doing is increasing the wages. When we look at the wages, we've recently done that. And we should be paying our support staff who, in general, take care of a lot of what goes on in our schools, a living wage. And so we have been taking steps to increase the wages of our support staff, which will in turn hopefully allow more people to want to get involved in our schools. I think once they're involved in the schools, they enjoy the atmosphere, they enjoy the personnel, they enjoy the students. And many times we can keep them as long as the wages are there to match.
Thank you. Mr. Aylen.
I would say, in my opinion, like I said earlier, possibly get more parents involved, more help, and if it comes down to it, start cutting different electives so the teachers are available for the main reading, writing, and arithmetic. Get the major source and concentrate on the basics again. And it's not going to be pretty, but if worse comes to worse, that's what that and good pay, but the problem is you can only pay somebody, well, I guess you can't pay them so much because they'll take as much as you give them. But I don't know, I'm not sure if pay is the right way to go. It definitely helps, but if the workforce isn't there, it just isn't there. So.
Thank you. Mr. Todd, how about you?
Some great comments. Ms. Hopper and Ms. Matt Franklin are correct. The district has been working very hard the last several years to get us closer to a living wage for a number of our historically lower paid positions. You may have seen in the news, we're increasing bus driver pay, starting this fall, significant amount. We need to think outside the box. The district has done a great job in the last several years of looking outside of St. Louis, not just for teachers, but for other staff as well. And we need to think about strategies that will bring those people to St. Louis for a district like Parkway, to work in a place that so many people want to work. And I would just say that we really continue to look at trying to provide a teaching staff and a staff in the building that mirrors our student population.
Thank you. Mr. Kerr.
Yeah, I think this goes back, a lot of these topics go back to safety as well as staff. And with staff, those teaching aides that we can hire and heavily train to help with some of the massive increases in children that need special help in the classroom is great, but it comes back to safety, and will they feel safe in that atmosphere where there's a lot of abuse? And it's not necessarily intentional abuse by a child, but it's abuse nonetheless. And in healthcare, we've seen a mass exodus in the last 2 or 3 years, just since the pandemic, related to directly that, and the abuse without recognition and/or any sort of insurance from employer that you're number one and not something else.
Ms. Guerra.
I think that we need to listen to our teachers more. My daughter's a teacher. I listen to her. I've spoken with a lot of teachers in Parkway. So we need to survey the teachers in a way that they will not be persecuted for their views. The funds need to be spent not on new programs, because we really just want them to be educationally focused, not on new programs, but have the funds go to job fairs and go to the HBCUs, the historically black colleges. And in that way, we could not just teach diversity, we could live diversity. And that is where we get our teachers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Everybody have a chance to answer everything? And I think this time we're going to begin with you, Mr. Ivancic. And there's an awful lot of people who are worried about what they call disparity in the suspension system. And they are worried that that disparity is racial and also with students who have problems. What do you think is the number one action that could be taken to close that disparity, and how would you get that done?
You know, the disparity, I'm not sure what the disparity is you're talking about there, but I would say that as with anything, you have protocols. This school district has protocols. There's ways for it to be administered. You administer it that way, and you make sure it's consistently administered. If it turns out that one group has more number than another group and there is a disparity, if you know that it's being operationalized from the front correctly and equally, that's all you need to worry about.
Ms. Mapp Franklin.
There's definitely a disparity in Parkway, and it's not any different from any other school in this country. I think one of the biggest thing that we need to do is make sure that all of our teachers have cultural education. I'm going to give a quick example. A friend of my son was in a 5th grade class with him. They had a substitute teacher. Substitute teacher, he noticed, was always calling out the black kids for being disruptive, and the white kids were doing the exact same thing, and she was not calling them out. He called her out on it. He was sent to the principal's office. That child understood that that teacher did not have cultural education to be able to tell that the behaviors were the exact same thing, and that she should have been calling all of those kids out or not calling out the black kids. It's one or the other. You can't pick and choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
I mean, I believe the same way. I mean, it should be the same all the way across the board. And if it's not, then something needs to be done, either retrain teachers or principals or administration, or something along those lines. I mean, it should not be stood for that African American, Asian, any children are treated differently than any other child.
Thank you very much. Mr. Todd.
As Ms. Mapp Franklin acknowledged, this is an issue across the country in all schools. I think that in addition to what she said, the effort that we've undertaken at educating teachers and those in the classroom about trauma-informed care, to know their students and know the situations that may have caused the behavior that they're seeing. Those are things that can play a significant part in how that behavior is handled at the time, and also after the fact, when you're bringing that student back in the classroom. How are you going to re-enter that student with their peers so that everyone is feeling like, you know, we've healed from this moment that has caused whatever that discipline was. So I think those restorative practices are important in keeping children in classrooms.
Thank you. Mr. Kerr.
So 2 things. Root cause analysis is first. You have to know what is causing the disparity in suspensions, which is something I've been asking Parkway for 8 weeks for data on. I've been told that the only data is the top-end aggregate data, which is suspension by days total, and no other data below that, without qualifying that data, it's very hard to see what's actually causing that disparity. If we're saying that that's the only data that we have and that it's absolutely accurate, which is what I get from the district, then we have to take a hard look at 4 of these schools in our district having very, very racist suspension policies via administrators. And that's a major problem, especially if it's truly accurate data. Otherwise, we need to collect a lot more data and understand the root cause of what's causing these issues.
Ms. Guerra?
The root cause, and that is very important. Look, 1 strike, okay. 2 strikes, that's it. Because we need to find the root cause. Why are children misbehaving? If they are not understanding class material, let's figure that out, and let's get the intensive testing to see what the problem is. Did they learn to read in the first place? We've got a problem with that currently right now in Parkway, reading. So I'm sure we'll get into that later, but we need a new reading program. If these kids could read, maybe they could be better engaged in a classroom and not disruptive.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper?
Would you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yes, the question is about disparity in suspensions, which many of the writers of the question said is racial. What specifically should we do about it?
So disparities in suspensions. We recognize that we do have disparities in that, and in fact, when we did our State of the District address, we didn't back down from that information because we knew that there was an issue, and Dr. Marty even said, you know, some of this information is not pretty, but we're not going to sugarcoat it, we're going to deal with it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take deeper dives into this information. We're going to find out exactly what's going on, to your point of root cause analysis. We do have to have more cultural education, and I do believe that our professional development does incorporate de-escalation techniques so that we can help our students stay in the classroom, that between the teacher and the student that they can work together. As far as suspensions go, we have to have a discipline policy where certain behaviors just cannot be tolerated. But we have to also look and see how is that, you know, a disparity. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to start with you this time, Ms. Mapp Franklin. And I didn't dodge any hard questions here, so we're going to have a cluster of them. This is about library books, about selection of books in libraries, about what the state is doing about library books and parents. And the bottom line is this. Do you think that librarians and teachers and administrators should be free to select books and decide on policies in terms of age-appropriate books, or do you think that parents should have more control?
I don't see that as an and or question. I see it as a both. I do believe that our teachers, our educators, our librarians, they are educated in this manner. They know what's age appropriate. But as a parent, you know your child. So you can make recommendations to your teachers, your children's teacher and librarian on what your child can read or cannot read. I've done that a number of times with my own children. In fact, in our library, in our elementary school, we send home manila folders with that a parent has to sign in order to give permission for their child to read it, because it's tend to be seen as a little bit more mature. It's usually reserved for the 4th or 5th graders, and not for anyone under that age. But a parent has to sign it to make sure that it's okay for that child to read it. It's a both. I think both parents and teachers should work together on that.
Mr. Aylen?
I agree with Ms. Matt Franklin. But I will say, I mean, if there's even any doubt in a librarian or educator's mind, it shouldn't happen. If you have any doubt at all, don't put it in the library. But also parents should be involved and know what their children are reading, for one thing. But I guess that a lot of parents do expect that they're not going to be reading, children in school shouldn't be reading things they shouldn't be. But, and maybe reserve that for higher levels of, like the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
Hey, Mr. Todd.
I agree with my two previous fellow candidates that parents should absolutely have involvement in determining what their students are able to read. In the state of Missouri, we passed a law about a year or so ago, I think it went into effect, that there are new and very specific rules that dictate what can be read, what can be accessed by students in the library. And we chose in Parkway, we chose to pull 5 books from our schools in order to protect librarians and others who may be recommending a book or offering a book to students. But I think just like the curriculum, I think having an opportunity for parents to review any book in the district, I think it's a great practice, and I'm glad that we do it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kerr.
This is one of those topics I've never understood why we have such an issue with controversial books when we have millions and millions of options for our kids. It was never an issue growing up for me, and it seems like to stay away from these books that are going to offend one person or another are relatively easy thing to do when it comes to that. But I also think the second part of that is a parent advisory board, where you have 6, 7, 10 parents that meet once every semester and go through books that are concerning and debate the quality of those books as far as historical value or whatever it may be, and then give board recommendations.
Thank you. Ms. Guerra.
I think in an academic setting such as Parkway, our goal should be to teach math, to teach English, writing, science, sexual books or graphic nature. Not so sure about that. In fact, I had a mother say to me the other day, my kid can't read and yet has access to material that he shouldn't. So I think that we need to think about that.
Ms. Hopper.
So just to clarify the question, it was if parents should also have involvement in determining the library books
And how much?
and how much involvement. So
Right.
we're talking about library books only right now.
We're talking about
Okay.
library books at this point. We're going to talk about curriculum in a minute.
So Parkway does have a process for reviewing books that come into the library. I think we've got a very solid process that we are able to identify books that can help a variety of students enjoy reading. That's our main goal, is we want kids to be able to learn to read and to love reading. They have to be able to find books that they can relate to, that they enjoy reading, but that are still age appropriate. I very much agree that parents should know what books are in the library, and if they do have an objection to a book, that they let the librarian know, their principal know, so that that child does not have access to that particular book. It is very important that we do have parent involvement, and I'm comfortable with our process that we currently have in place. And with the new legislation that's in place as well, there's another layer there that helps protect some of those books that are coming in.
Thank you. Mr. Ivancic.
Yeah, it sounds like to me that we pretty much all agree on what, on how this should work. I mean, the book should be age appropriate, educators should present that, parents should be involved as to what the books are and what's being presented to their children. And if a parent objects, then I think the parent does have the final say on whether or not the child gets to read the book or not read the book. It should always be the parent as having the final say.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Allen, we're going to start with you on this question. And now we're going to talk about curriculum. And this was the second highest volume of questions about curriculum. And that is, and understand there's a difference between curriculum and lesson plans, okay? And some people talked about specific lesson plans, and some people talked about curriculums. Lesson plans are the things you do specifically for that period or that day, okay? But they want to know how transparent should the district be about specific lesson plans. Some of them wanted to know how transparent should the curriculum be to not only parents, but also district taxpayers. And 4 people said that they objected to the curriculum and specific lesson plans in elementary classrooms dealing with LGBTQ plus issues, and they thought that was going on. So that is the one example that kept surfacing when people talked about this. So you get to do that one first.
I mean, my gut feeling is, or my opinion is, for curriculum, the parents should, in reality, the teachers should have no agenda other than education. If it veers from education, as far as the basics again, then you're off course. And unfortunately, teachers can do that without parents even knowing, unless a child comes home. But I think, yeah, especially for grade school, in my opinion, that should not even be, that subject shouldn't be broached, really. It should be taken care of by the parents, for that certain aspect. I mean, maybe the teacher sends the child's parent an email or a letter and says, your child is asking questions, would you please go over this with them? Again, I think just stay in our lane.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Todd?
I agree with Mr. Aylen that, like the book topic that we just discussed, there should be an open conversation between parents and teachers. Teachers, from what I understand, over the last however many decades, teachers have been very accessible with parents, and even to the point that a couple of years ago, we strongly encourage teachers to turn off their computers at night and take a little personal time for them and not be responding to parents at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, but still be responsive. But I do think that there needs to be a two-way conversation, communication at all times between parents and teachers, and that means that parents need to be engaged, and we have a lot of parents who are not, and I hope that more continue to become more engaged with their teachers so they know what is being talked about in the class, and they have some input.
Thank you. Mr. Kerr?
So it's always been my opinion that a teacher shouldn't have to make their lessons plans available to parents. And the reason being is, why should we have to worry about that? Why should we have to be worried about what's being taught in the classroom, especially when it comes down to elementary and middle school? But when you inject political or social ideology into that classroom, you're not teaching a child how to think, you're teaching them what to think. And there's a big difference there, and we see that in all of our academic measurements when it comes to critical thinking. There's been a large loss of critical thinking over the last decade, and it's very evident as MAP standards change. They also are heavily based on critical thinking. And so that's a big drop in that proficiency. We've seen a lot in the last 6-7 years of the addition of social emotional programs that have seemingly eroded the trust in a lot of parents, whether it's true or not. And I know our child is elementary, and I don't know of any LGBT curriculum. So.
Thank you. Ms. Guerra?
So the question was, how transparent should the curriculum be, the Parkway
Yes.
curriculum?
And/or lesson plans, yeah.
Okay. And lesson plans are a teacher's business. They should actually be reflective of what the subject area is. We shouldn't have to worry about that, as Mr. Kerr said. They should not only be transparent, the curriculum, but parents should be involved in the curriculum, of the making of the curriculum, with teachers, with department heads. Especially in this day of the issues that Mr. Kerr referred to, the social emotional learning. Teachers want to teach. We need to free them up from that. But it is soaked the curriculum is currently soaked with SEL, and they are instructed to teach in that regard.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Hopper?
I think the curriculum and/or lesson plan should be very transparent. Parents have a right to know what is being taught in the classrooms to their children. Sometimes you don't get that from your kids, so you need to get that straight from your teacher. My understanding, though, of lesson plans is that sometimes these can change, and that may end up being very burdensome to the teacher to always constantly be having to put a lesson plan out on a website, because things change. The dynamics of the classroom may change, where kids are at and trying to learn the material, et cetera. So I don't know if a lesson plan per se, we would need to have our teacher voice in that to understand if that's truly something that is doable. But by all means, transparency for parents to understand and know what their children are learning in the classroom.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Ivancic?
Yes, transparency should be there. We do have it in Parkway. It can always be improved. We have to look at it from the light of, if we're teaching academics and we're staying a little away from the social and cultural teaching, which is staying with math and, physics and all of those things, it should be open, and at any time a parent can look at what the lesson plan is. What I would like to see is the parents more involved in that. What I've been seeing in the last, couple of years is all of a sudden a parent looks at their child's piece of paper and says, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that's being taught. That's horrible. How come the parent hasn't asked that from the beginning? How come the parent hasn't gotten involved in the beginning and said, what is the curriculum? What should it be? And the school can be very open and say, this is what it is. And then at that point, they can start the dialogue.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, you, Ms. Matt Franklin.
Thank you for leading me into that question, Mr. Ivancic. Curriculum has been transparent since the internet was created. I remember when my firstborn was in preschool, and I was looking at Parkway as our school, and I started cyber stalking everything. All the different schools that my child might possibly go to. What was the curriculum? What were the lesson plans? Who were the teachers? The information is out there. Parents have the information. They just have to look. And it's not hard because it's posted on every single website.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Todd, we're going to start with you this time. The absolute number one topic of questions was about gender identity issues, both online and tonight, the questions that you've turned in. So I've tried to combine them. What is your position on gender, the place of gender issues in district policy? That would include, and people were very specific, they want to know what you think about designating bathrooms. They want to know what you think about locker rooms. But a lot of them really want to know what you think about student confidentiality issues. If a student goes to a teacher or a counselor, is that person responsible for telling their parents? And they're also worried about protecting the LGBTQ plus community. So what do you think the relationship is, or the place that gender identity issues have in district policy?
All that in a minute.
Yep.
Well, obviously, it is a question on everybody's mind. It's becoming more and more of a question as our society evolves. I think that as far as our policies go, we don't have a policy that dictates what bathroom has to be used. We expect boys will use the boys' bathroom. We expect that girls will use the girls' bathroom. We have gender-neutral bathrooms in some buildings. The nurse's office has been identified as the nurse's bathroom has been identified as one of those as well. The confidentiality is a big thing we've heard about recently. And as long as a student is under 18, we have an obligation to let a parent know when a student is having questions that may be better suited for a family. And we encourage families and students to have those conversations.
Mr. Kerr.
So, like Mr. Todd said, most buildings have unisex bathrooms at the nurse's office or somewhere else in the building. I think those are a great, I don't want to say concession, but a great avenue to give the ability to have a bathroom that's theirs to use without the issues of parents across the board and then wanting boys and girls bathrooms. I don't see any issues with the boys and girls bathrooms, and I think Misha controls locker room policy when it comes to boys and girls in bathrooms in general. So that's not something the district controls anyway, so it would just be your ancillary bathrooms, which I think is a very easy solution there.
Okay, and feel free, everybody, to talk about the other examples. Ms. Guerra.
Okay, so I think the bathrooms are covered. So I would say as a counselor that every individual child ought to be protected. LGBTQ, children, and also the LGBTQ not being encouraged to pursue such. And that is of concern to many parents, and I think that's why there were so many questions on it, because we hear tell the stories of how it is encouraged, and we also see, as Ms. Franklin suggested, we do the research, and I did, and the organizations that propel this agenda, and I say propel, it is being encouraged. It is written in directives for teachers by organizations such as CDC, first and foremost, and SECUS. It's
Okay, thank you.
reprehensible.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
Well, first of all, I know this is heavy on everyone's minds. We have, where I believe we do our best is in local control, that on an individual building basis, students are able, whether they are LGBTQ or otherwise, if they don't feel comfortable, they want alternative options for locker rooms and bathrooms, they are free to talk to the principal, a counselor, a nurse, and talk about some alternative options. Every student should have a feeling of being safe, and not everybody enjoys being in a locker room with a bunch of other people. Misha does not control the locker rooms and bathrooms. They do have policy over trans athletes. I think that's where that was going with that. We do follow Misha when it comes to trans athletes. But again, we want to remain in a respectful environment where everybody feels safe.
Okay. Mr. Ivancic.
You know, I assume we're talking about sexual identity. With the child, and they bring up, we have to protect the child and take care of them. If they bring up a question or have a concern, and it's brought to a counselor, a nurse, a teacher, someone in the education school district, the first set of action should be it goes to the parents and the family. And the parent and the family take it over at that point. They take care of the counseling, they'll take care of whatever needs to be done with that child. That's not the role of the school at that point. Well, I'll leave it there, but that's what it should be. No, it's fine.
Ms. Matt Franklin.
So honestly, I think that us adults make a bigger deal out of this than their kids. I think that when you are a student that may be transgender or gay or part of the LGBTQ community, all you want to do is feel safe and included. That's what our schools are supposed to provide. Safety and inclusion for all of our students. That's really all I have to say about that. I think it's really an issue that we just need to treat our students as kids. That's what they are. And keep some of the other stuff out of it. Let us educate our kids.
Mr. Allen.
I believe in the same I mean, as soon as a child expresses any kind of interest or wants to talk to a teacher, I believe the first thing the teacher does after that conversation is call the parents. The parent should have a say. I mean, the school is not raising this child, the parent is. So the parent should be in charge most of the time. Restrooms, most restrooms have stalls in them. The stalls provide privacy, so, but and these kids are, I mean, especially in the middle school, they're very confused. I mean, my kids, it boggles my mind sometimes what they say because you don't know what they're thinking. So, I mean, these kids are very confused as it is in this, especially in the middle school. So it's, I mean, parents just need to, unfortunately, this sounds old school, but they need to parent.
Okay. Just so you know that you have hope, we only have a couple more questions before the closing statement, but let's change subjects a bit. There were a number of questions about classroom technology. The specific one that applies to this district is, what do you think about the proposal to replace textbooks with Chromebooks? There were 2 or 3 questions that said, don't you think we're using too much technology in the classroom? Studies are showing that's harmful. And then I also was sensitive to what somebody said about what do you put in students' brains. And then 2 people wrote questions tonight saying, are you talking about technology with that? So they're interested in what you think about that. So, Mr. Kerr?
So I don't see any reason we switch to Chromebooks from textbooks. And we can, you know, is it cheaper? Maybe. Is our child's health worth a few dollars less? I don't think so, at least in this district. The reality is we have dozens and dozens and really hundreds of academic studies that show how poor screen time is over and over. But I'll also give you an example. My first grader, who really shouldn't have a whole lot to do with Chromebooks anyway, they just don't have a whole lot of stuff that they use those for, came home last week and told me that that Ukraine had lost the war. And I have several Ukrainian friends, and I didn't know where she was coming from. I started prodding her, and she said that she said that there was a website that came up on her Chromebook, which tells me it's very, you know, poor security. So.
Thank you. Ms. Guerra?
So, yeah, poor security that comes up and then fractures a child's attention span, and also takes away a parental perusal from an actual book of what is coming out in the classroom. Look, people in Silicon Valley don't even allow their kids to have a Chromebook. Because why? I think it's interesting. That's my position on it. Books are important.
Okay, Ms. Hopper?
I believe that we need textbooks and classroom technology in order to fulfill the complete education of our children. There are some things where our hard copy textbooks are valuable, especially when it comes to math. And if you have paper and pencil that on certain things that you have to be able to do, then we need to be able to do both. I do believe that there is something to be said for Chromebook and to be able to use technology. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and if I don't know how to do something, I just say, here, help me, please, and she's able to do it. So this is educating our students for an ever-changing world, and to be capable, curious, confident, and caring as part of their mission. Technology is a piece of that. We cannot get away from that. I think we do need to do it in a safe environment, and we do have safety features on our Chromebooks and monitoring that goes on if there are problems. So I'm very comfortable with that.
Thank you. Mr. Ivancic?
I would agree that it's a blend of textbooks and Chrome electronics technology. My concern with the technology is making sure that we have the security on it, that it just has what the child needs to do their lessons and their work. It's not doing social media or doing internet searches or anything like that that distracts them. One of the things we do have to be careful about with technology is that sometimes it breaks, and that can hinder the education of the child, because the textbook doesn't. You open a textbook up, it's still there. I would also agree with Deborah about handwriting stuff out. That helps with the learning process to actually work through a problem. I have an MBA. I took my MBA before computers existed, and we had to do future value and present value, pencil and paper. And you learned how to do it, and you understood it a lot better, whereas now you can go into a spreadsheet and the formula just does it, and it makes you wonder, have they learned anything or not? So.
Thank you. Ms. Mapp Franklin.
I believe that technology is important to our classrooms. We are moving to a technological world. It's important for our students to understand how to use our technology and how to use it appropriately. One of the better ways of doing that is to teach them how to do that in a safe environment. Our Chromebooks have great parental or even beyond parental controls on them, and it has 24/7 monitoring. So our students are constantly being monitored on what's going on their Chromebooks. I would also say that it is important to continue to have written paper. There are some students that need that. And from every option, from my communication with different counselors and teachers, I've had that opportunity to give my children the paper copies if they needed it instead of just the Chromebooks. So we do have those options available.
Thank you. Mr. Elon.
Well, I will say this, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, my child broke through the firewall, and we had to have a conversation with Dr. Marty. So it's not the safest. And a lot of these kids know electronics better than we do. Most adults, for sure. I believe I can use a computer as a tool. I use it for calculations and writing reports at work. That's about it. My children, when they have downtime, they're on YouTube, they're in the classroom. So, in my opinion, I think school books should come back and only maybe have a computer lab to where they go learn how to use Excel or Word, Microsoft Word or something like that. Otherwise, they have way too much time, too much downtime, and they can get themselves in trouble.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Mr. Todd, what about you?
I will say, like Ms. Matt Franklin did, that Parkway Security is among the best in schools in St. Louis. I know we're regularly collaborating with other districts on the best practices. I know our Chromebooks have layer upon layer of security on them, and as Mr. Aylen pointed out, kids are smart, and every day they figure out a new way to get around something. So if you're a parent and you do discover there's something that your child shouldn't be seeing, please say something to someone, a teacher, a principal, or send the board an email. But I do think between textbooks and Chromebooks, I think there needs to be a balance. I think technology provides a great view of the world outside of here. I think textbooks also provide a traditional and well-proven method of instruction. So I think it's all of the balance.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I didn't get to ask all of your questions, and I have one more question left. But if you've got your old-fashioned pens or pencils, I want to mention some things that people asked about that I think belong answered in your final statement. So let me just mention some of them to you. What specific skill or attribute, unique one, do you bring to the district as a reason for you to be elected? Why do you want to serve? Some people are very concerned about endorsements. Who endorsed you? Be they national groups, local NEA groups, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe you could address that. There were a number of questions about personal behavior, and I decided that I would give you the option to talk about that in the closing statement. Do you believe that as an elected official that your personal behavior, for your personal behavior, you should be held accountable. And how does that position in the community affect what you're free to do, even in your personal life? So I hope this gives you some things to think about and to incorporate into your final statements. I think they belong in there, and there were a lot of them, and I tried to group them so that we could do that. Let me also say that there was a number of questions that I don't have time for. Some deal with TIFs. You might want to talk to them specifically about that afterwards. Some also deal with other kinds of negotiating with unions, et cetera, et cetera. And I hope that you will stay afterwards. We've built the time in for you to talk to these people about those things, and I apologize. I tried to focus on what I thought was most important to you, just given what you turned in. So here's the last question, and by my calculation, I guess I'll put it that way with my little pen. Ms. Guerra, you're going to be first. And then when we get to the final statements, Mr. Allen, you're going to be first, and we're going to go up the table. Here's the last question. Lots of people are concerned about violence, school safety in terms of potential shootings, but they're also concerned about violent acts that they say are accelerating in the district. What specific thing would you do to start addressing that? And we're going to start with you, Ms. Guerra.
As I said before, first and foremost, change the content or how the curriculum is taught. And then enforce a heavy discipline policy. Children need to learn to be accountable for their actions, their behavior. And I have a neighbor who said, Kathy, he doesn't want to go to school because he said he will learn more at home. It's too noisy in the classroom. And she asked if he could have home instruction via online. No, the answer was no. I think that's an issue. Discipline is an issue, and as I stated before, I think we need to have a heavy discipline policy and test these kids, whoever has a problem, a behavior problem. And I am not saying it is black or white, Asian, everybody ought to be tested
Thank
if there's
you.
a problem.
Thank you. Ms. Hopper.
Could you repeat what the
Yes.
bottom line question is here?
People are concerned about violence. They talk about it in two distinct ways. Number one, particularly given the events of today, addressing the risk of a school shooting or a severe violent act. Secondly, they're concerned about what they say is an increased trend toward violence in this district, violent acts that aren't school shootings, okay? What specific thing would you do to start working on those problems?
Okay, thank you. Well, nobody wants to see violence, and I am all for trying to improve the bullying, the harassment, and the intimidation within our schools. I don't believe that our classrooms are so out of control that our teachers are not able to teach our students. I do not believe that. What I do believe is that we do have SROs in our schools. We're very proud of them. We have a 4E training program for our students and teachers to be able to know what to do if we do have some kind of active shooter type of activity taking place. We have a wonderful security department who is top-notch here. But I also believe that we also need to improve our character development program. We need to get our students to feel that, violence is not an option. And as part of our social emotional learning things, we do teach, and there are some standards that help students to learn how to control their emotions.
Thank you. Mr.
I'm going to address I think the second part of the question on the violence. I don't want to talk about school shooting because I don't think this is a time to talk about that right now. But if, Parkway has protocol, they have policies on how to handle situations with students. And those just need to be followed. Maybe they need to be fine-tuned a little more. One of the problems we have in society as a general is that we don't operationalize our laws. We love to make laws, we don't enforce them. Things would change with traffic if we had a police officer at every corner and stopped everyone who ran a stop sign. You know, I was going up the street a couple of years ago, school bus stopped, lights, sign went out, car went right around that school bus. I actually waited until the school bus took off. I followed that car, stopped the driver, and talked to him myself. And that's how I did it, only talked. But what it made me realize is that we
Thank you.
need to stop.
Thank you. That's a good place to stop. Ms. Mapp Franklin.
So when we look at our society, we see violence increasing throughout our society. That's naturally going to come into our schools. I think one of the things that we can work on in our schools is to understand the students and the environments that they're coming from, the trauma that they're exhibiting. This is nationwide. It's not just in our schools that we're seeing it. So we have to do something with our students that can help them learn how to deal with their various issues that they're dealing with that might come out in violent ways. One of those ways is through our character education programs, through social emotional learning, through having additional mental health resources available within our schools. All of those things can help those particular students learn how to deal with the issues that are out in our world that's coming out in them in a violent way.
Thank you. Mr. Aylen.
As far as like the safety in the schools, I mean, barring turning a school into a prison, kids are going to learn how to get in and out if they have guns, unfortunately. My thing would be to hire an outside source, and I'm pretty sure Parkway has probably done this, and
Want to know about your endorsements, both by national organizations. Some people mentioned the NEA, where that was concerned, the local NEA with this. They want to know if you should be held accountable because you're a public official for your personal behavior. Why they should vote for you. So they're interested now in your character and why you should be elected.
Okay. As far as I know, I'm not backed by anybody but my wife. As far as your character, yes, I believe character, in my opinion, character is a big thing. And we teach our kids this. I mean, you can be hanging out with people and be found guilty by association. And we try to make sure our children hang out with people with good character. But that being said also, people do make mistakes. And sometimes we have to have a little grace. But I'm not a politician. I don't want to really even have this job, but my whole outlook is either you can sit at home and complain, or you can do something about it and get in the game. So I decided to try to do something about it. So that's why I'm running, and I don't have a whole lot of diplomacy sometimes, but I do have, I think logically, and I'm an engineer, and my job is to solve problems. So that's what, it may take a while, but eventually I do solve the problems. And vote for me on April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mapp Franklin.
So I consider myself a servant leader, and I believe through the years of being in Parkway, I've served Parkway in a number of roles. As a parent, I was a classroom volunteer, and I had the ability to see teachers nurture our children in that capacity. As a volunteer, I was able to see how teachers dealt with those 6 through 11-year-olds, depending on that grade level, and keep them all on task skillfully. As a substitute teacher, I was able to communicate with the students in a way that often brought me back. I was often requested to come back to different teachers' buildings. And if Parkway entrusts me to serve a full term, it would be an honor. I honestly consider myself this a service to our community. I am committed to Parkway because Parkway has done so much for my family and my children. Their education has been top-notch. Is it perfect? No, I don't think so. And that's one of the reasons that I get involved, is because I want to see Parkway at its best. And I know that when we work together, that's what we'll get, is Parkway at its best. I also understand that being on a board, we are not individuals. We are a board, and we need to work with our superintendent, our one employee, to make sure that we are collaborating and working effectively to move the district in a successful way. The most successful districts have a very effective and collaborative superintendent and board team, and I would like to
Thank you.
continue that.
Mr. Avancic.
I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, because you got a great opportunity. We live in a republic, and in a republic, you get to vote in the person who you think represents you. So that's the choice you have amongst all of us here. For myself, I have a unique ability, and that is, as I said earlier, I can see things differently because I'm not tied into the network. I'm not tied into the NEA. I'm not tied into the history. I'm not tied into anything, so I can ask those questions very honestly. I have a background of finance. I have 45 years in healthcare before I retired. I won national awards in operational efficiency. I've been on multiple non-for-profit boards. I understand the collaboration there is into working on a board, working with people, having objectives, and moving organizations in those directions. If you think that's the person you want on the board, click mark on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Hopper.
I'd like to also thank my fellow candidates for being here for tonight's dialogue. We've had some nice conversation. I do think that board members need to serve as role models in their community. I believe I have proven to be somebody that can be counted on, that is trustworthy, that is responsible, and that will listen. As far as the endorsements go, it did bother me that I heard some of the things that were being said about that. We get a lot of questionnaires from a variety of different groups, and I feel compelled, as it's my duty, to respond to any question and any meet and greet invitation that comes along, because I think educating voters is very important. We don't always ask for those endorsements. They come to us. That does not mean that we are beholden to any endorsement. It just means that they support us, which is great, and thank them very much. I want to continue. I'm very proud of Parkway, and as I said earlier, I have a deep care for this community, and I want to continue to see it thrive, and I'm proud of what we have done. Is there still work to be done? Of course. But I want to continue to maintain the public's trust and keep Parkway on a path of continuous improvement. And finally, you have my personal commitment to excellence and doing what's right for all of our students. I'll continue to ask tough questions. I will challenge our district administrators, and I will work collaboratively with my fellow board members to be a collective decision-making body. As an alum of Washington University and having worked at their medical school for almost 20 years, also with some hospital administration background, I have developed a passion for being in a vibrant educational and diverse culture. This, along with my school board experience in raising children in
Thank
this
you.
district, prepare me very well.
Thank you.
I appreciate your vote on April 4th.
Ms. Guerra.
I'm running on trust. The greatest trust that you can give someone is to care for another's child. So that's why I'm running. I believe that I bring some skill set, attributes of mental health care, and a background that can help our students. And this is an issue ongoing. Why do I want to serve? I care about people. I care about children. They are our asset. And so I believe that I can, in my way as a therapist, add to board's knowledge on how to in those areas. I think that my life should be important, what I do, and to all human beings, that it's not just for the school district, it's for everybody, for the world. Someone also mentioned that LGBTQ is not a concern so much to the kids as it is to the parents, but I will remind you that our brains are fully formed. And so I appreciate your being here, appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Kerr.
So we all make mistakes. 7 years ago, I made a big mistake, and I wasn't a adult per se, in the sense that I didn't know a whole lot about myself. I've spent 7 years not only not trying to correct that, but to understand myself, understand how my brain works, understand how my intuition and ability to affect others and change things works. And that's, I think, something that's more important to me than anything is the journey, and not the unfortunate incident. I will say that the original video that was 6 minutes and 37 seconds long was edited 2.5 minutes of context out of it before it was reposted, with the original that has never violated community standards being deleted the day before. So, you know, political hit what you want. Skills and attributes, data-driven. I live and die by data. That's what I do. I do research. Data doesn't know a color. Data knows root causes. We look at data because it doesn't delineate this child from this child. It says this is the issue, and then how are we going to solve it on evidence-based practices? Bottom line, why serve my kids? I want my kids to have the best education they possibly can without costing me my entire salary every year. Personal behavior as a board member, absolutely. You should be accountable as a board member for your behavior in the community. Endorsements. I don't have any special endorsements. I've actually declined. However, I still answer the questions when we get the questionnaires, and I send them back out. I post every single one of those questionnaires on my social media as public and transparent. There's nothing that I don't want. However, I think endorsements put you in a bad
Thank
place
you.
when it comes to negotiating.
Thank you. Mr. Todd.
Well, I'd just like to thank you all again for spending the evening with us. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters again for this opportunity. I think the one skill or attribute that defines me in this position is a leader. I've been a leader on the board for 5 of the 6 years that I've been here. I've been a leader in multiple volunteer opportunities in the community. Why am I serving? I'm the only one of these candidates that graduated from Parkway Schools. My father went to Parkway Schools a long, long time ago, and my kids are proud graduates of Parkway Schools. When I ran 6 years ago, we didn't have an election 3 years ago because we were unopposed, but when I ran 6 years ago, I had certain endorsements then. I have other additional endorsements this time around. Not 6 years ago, not this time have I ever taken one dime from any of those organizations. Behavior, I think, behavior is paramount. I think, we try and lead from the top down. We have a great, very cohesive board of directors, and everyone behaves well. Dr. Marty, our superintendent, demands that, expects that of all of our staff, and we support him in that. And we try to model the behavior that we expect to see in our staff, and then we expect our staff to model that behavior that they expect to see in their students. I think that being on this board, I think is one or more of the board members said, we're a team. It's 7 people. You have individual thoughts and ideas, but you can't be on this board with an agenda. You have to be willing to work collaboratively with everyone else on the board, with teachers, administrators, and you really, for those of you making your decision, you have to trust.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give them all a round of applause. I think that we got through a lot of issues tonight. If you found this to be helpful, we also have the voter's guide in the back there, and you can find that to be helpful. And we have it online, vote411.org, for those who like technology, and we also have it in paper form in the back, or take one for somebody else. We do 6 counties. And if you think that educating voters and trying to model civil discourse and talking about real issues, not just sound bites, not just a flyer with 2 lines on it that lands on your doorstep, if you think that's important, think about joining the League of Women Voters. We think the #1 problem in our culture is divisiveness. And we have got to learn how to work together for better government. Nothing is more important than a school board. And so I hope that you will join us. Now, the problem with voting is that people don't vote, or they just think about presidential politics. There was a question I didn't ask about something that Congress passed today, and I just decided not to do it. Not that I didn't think it was important, but I think local politics is where we need the most work because it affects our lives the most. I want you to pledge to contact 5 people who are wavering about voting on April 4th and persuade them to do it. Now, you all live in the county. Right now, you can do no excuse absentee voting by walking up to one of the following 4 places: the Board of Elections in St. Anne at Northwest Plaza, the North County Rec Complex, but out here, you can go to the Baldwin Police Department, which is at 300 Park Drive. And you can walk in there, and during regular office hours, 8:30 to 4:30, you can, no excuse, vote before the election. You're also extremely lucky because you can go to any polling place in the county and they will pull up your ballot. I live in the city. I do not have that privilege yet. I certainly do envy it. So if you have to go to a doctor's appointment on election day, or you're coming from work, or you're picking up your kid, look at the list of polling places, find one that's near where you're going to be, and go there and vote. They will pull up your individual ballot. This is terrific. And I commend your Board of Elections for spending their COVID money to get that done. So the thing is, you need to vote thoughtfully. And in the back, we have not only the school boards, but we also have city councils. Yes. We have important propositions. Some of them are municipal propositions, some of them are county propositions, et cetera, and in a nonpartisan, factual way, we have tried to explain them to you, particularly the ballot issues in English, so that you can understand them. And we will be at as many polling places as we can to make sure that everybody can vote. And please tell those who are elderly in your circles that if they have a driver's license or a real ID, non-driver's license ID, that expired after the November 2022 election, they can still use it to vote. The authorities are being very quiet about this, but I want you to know that. And secondly, if they don't have that, by gosh, make sure that they do file a provisional ballot. If you don't think provisional ballots count, I hope you read the newspaper or heard the news in St. Louis City. We had a dead tie in the primary and award election. It was the provisional ballots that were checked against signatures that made the difference in that. So We need to get serious and protect our democracy, and democracy starts right in our backyard. So thank you very much, and I apologize for keeping you a little bit longer, but I thought your questions were important. And we have lots of league information back there, and we've got voters' guides, and I even have 50 or more in the back of my car. So go ahead and take them.